summer of 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, a woman stepped out of her half-timbered house and began to dance. Her name was Frau Troffea. There was no music. She simply raised her arms, turned her face toward the July sun, and began to move. At first, people thought she was celebrating. Perhaps a wedding, perhaps a child finally born. But Frau Troffea did not stop. She danced through the afternoon. She danced through the evening. She danced through the night. By the next morning, her feet were bleeding. Her eyes were vacant. Her arms still thrashed. Her body still convulsed. But her face showed nothing at all. Her husband begged her to rest. Her daughter tried to hold her still. It did not matter. She danced. I was a physician's assistant in Strasbourg that summer. I saw the whole thing within 3 days. 34 more people had joined her. Men, women, the young, the old. They stepped out of their homes, dropped whatever they were carrying, and began to dance in the narrow cobbled streets. Not gracefully, not joyfully. Their movements were spasmodic. Their bodies jerked as if pulled by invisible strings. Their arms flailed without rhythm. Their heads rolled on their necks like loose weights. And always, always, the same expressionless eyes. By August, the city was in chaos. Between 50 and 400 people were dancing. The city council was terrified. They summoned every physician in the region. My master, Dr. Albrecht, examined the afflicted. He looked into their glassy eyes. He felt the racing pulses. He watched the blood pool in their swollen feet, soaking through their shoes. He wrote in his journal, "These people are not possessed. They are not mad. They are suffering from overheated blood." The remedy, he concluded, was more dancing. Dance the heat out. I remember staring at him, unable to comprehend what he was saying. The cure for people who could not stop dancing was to force them to keep dancing. The city council believed him. They opened the guild halls. They hired musicians. They paid strong men to hold the dancers upright when their legs gave out. The streets of Strasbourg became a theater of endurance. The music played. The dancers danced, and people began to die. They died of heart attacks, their bodies pushed beyond every limit. They died of exhaustion, their muscles simply stopped responding. They died of thirst, too consumed by the dance to drink. 15 a day, some chroniclers claimed. 15. I watched a man I knew, a baker named Klaus, who had sold me bread every morning for 3 years. Dance until his heart burst. He fell mid-step. His body twitched for half a minute. Then nothing. No one stopped dancing. The church declared it the curse of Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers, invoked to punish sinners. Priests came from every parish. They sprinkled holy water on the dancers' red shoes. They painted crosses on their soles. They chanted Latin incantations and swung censers of incense. Some of the afflicted confessed their sins between convulsions, believing they had been cursed. Others screamed that they could not stop, that something was making them. I asked one of them, a young woman no older than my own daughter, what she felt. She looked at me with eyes that were not her own. "It is not me doing this," she said, "but I do not want it to end." By early September, the plague began to fade. The remaining dancers were led to a mountaintop chapel, where they prayed for forgiveness. One by one, they stopped. The city returned to normal, but I have never forgotten what I saw. To this day, no one truly knows what caused it. Ergot poisoning, mass hysteria, a shared psychosis born of famine and fear, or something else entirely, something that made 400 people dance until they died. And if you have ever felt a rhythm take hold of you, a beat you cannot resist, a movement you cannot stop, you understand. You understand that sometimes the body obeys something the mind cannot name. The 26th of June, in the year 1284, 130 children walked out of the city of Hamelin and were never seen again. This is not a fairy tale. It is recorded in the town, as old as chronicles. It was carved into the stained glass of the church. It was inscribed on the town gate. It was written into the memory of a generation. I was 12 years old when it happened. My name is Adelheid, and I was the one who stayed behind. My left leg had been twisted since birth. I could walk, barely, but I could not run. And on that day, the day the children vanished, that was the difference between those who were taken and those who were spared. The man came through the west gate at noon. He was young, perhaps 30 years of age, and handsome in a way that made people stop and stare. His clothing was the strangest thing about him. Not one color, but many. Bright patches of red and yellow and green, stitched together like a carnival tent. He carried a pipe made of silver. The town of Hamelin was suffering that summer, not from rats. The rats were added to the story later, by people who needed to make the tale easier to stomach. No, Hamelin was suffering from something worse: overpopulation, famine, poverty, too many young people and not enough land, too many mouths and not enough grain. The piper, if that is even what he was, did not play for rats. He played for children. I was sitting by the fountain in the market square when I first heard the music. It was not loud. It was insistent, a melody that seemed to thread itself through the noise of the market, through the clatter of carts and the shouts of merchants, finding its way into your ears, whether you wanted it or not. My younger brother, Lucas, was standing beside me. He was 9, strong legs, quick smile. He heard the music before I did. "Adelheid," he said, "do you hear that?" I did, and so did every other child in Hamelin. They came from every street, every alley, every doorway. Boys and girls, toddlers and teenagers, rich and poor. They all moved toward the sound. The adults were in church. It was the feast day of Saints John and Paul. The bells were ringing. The prayers were being sung. No one saw. Lucas took my hand. "Come on," he said. "We have to follow." I pulled away, not because I was wise, not because I was afraid, but because my leg would not let me. "I cannot run, Lucas," I told him. "Stay with me." He looked at me, and for a moment, a single breath, I thought he would stay. Then the music swelled, and his eyes went glassy, and he let go. I watched him join the river of children flowing toward the east gate. 130 of them, laughing, stumbling, silent, crying, entranced, following a man in colored clothes, toward the place called Calvary, and into the mountain. The chronicles say the children entered Koppenberg, the hill near the execution grounds, and vanished. Some accounts say the mountain opened. Some say a cavern swallowed them. Some say they simply walked and walked until they were no longer in Hamelin. Whatever happened, not one of them returned. The adults emerged from the church to find a town without children. The screams started at the east gate and spread street, my street. Mothers ran from house to house, from town to town, as far as their legs would carry them. My own mother collapsed at the edge of the Weser River, half a day's walk from Hamelin, still calling Lucas's name. They never found him. They never found any of them. The town counted time differently after that, not by the calendar of Christ, but by the year the children left. 3 years after the children departed. 10 years after the children departed. They even recorded it on the town gate, so no one would forget. In the year 1284, on the day of John and Paul, 130 children born in Hamelin were led away by a piper clothed in many colors and lost at Calvary near the Koppen. To this day on Bangelosenstrasse, the street where the children were last seen, music and dancing are forbidden. Some say it is a gesture of respect. I say it is fear. I am old now, older than my mother ever became. I have spent 60 years trying to understand what happened. The scholars have their theories. Emigration to the east, they say, recruitment for colonies. Young people sent to settle new lands. They point to family names that appear hundreds of miles away. They call it the reasonable explanation. But I was there, and I saw my brother's face as he walked away. He was not a colonist. He was not a settler. He was a 9-year-old boy who had never traveled farther than the next village. And something in that music took him somewhere I have never been able to follow. 100 years after the children left, the town chronicler wrote 4 words in the margin of his book. A voice was heard from on high, he wrote, and the mother was bewailing her son. Came for me on the 3rd Sunday after Easter. I was in my garden, pulling weeds from between the rosemary. The sun was warm. My hands were dirty, and then the shadow fell across me, and I looked up and I saw the Inquisitor. His name was Heinrich Kramer. He was the author of a book they called the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. In his book, Kramer had written that women were more prone to witchcraft than men. He had written, and I quote from memory, "All witchcraft comes from carnal lust, which in women is insatiable. I was a midwife, that was my crime. My name is Margatha. I was born in a village near Constance in the year 1462. I learned herbs from my grandmother and childbirth from my mother. I delivered 73 babies before they arrested me. 73, 3 of them died. That was all Kramer needed. According to his book, midwives were the most dangerous kind of witch. No one does more harm to the Catholic faith than midwives, he wrote. For they kill newborn children in ways that make it appear they died of natural causes. My 3 babies had been born blue. The cord around the neck, the mother too weak, the delivery too late. None of this mattered to the Inquisitor. They took me to a stone room beneath the courthouse. There was no window. There was a chair. There were instruments on the wall. And there was a man, a young scribe, sitting in the corner with ink, stained fingers and a frightened face. He was the one who wrote everything down. His name was Johannes. I remember his name because he was the only one who ever looked at me with anything other than disgust. Kramer's book was a manual. It told the judges exactly how to conduct a witch trial, how to frame the questions, how to apply the torture, how to recognize the signs of guilt. If a woman wept during her trial, Kramer wrote, she was a witch trying to deceive the court with false tears. If she did not weep, she was a witch who had been stripped of her tears by the devil. There was no correct answer. They strapped me to the ladder. They asked me to confess. Confess to what? I asked them. To trafficking with demons, to causing the deaths of infants, to cursing the crops of neighbors I had never met. They showed me the accusations. A woman whose baby I had delivered, a healthy boy, 7 pounds, claimed she had seen me flying over her rooftop at midnight. A farmer whose wife I had never treated swore that I had touched his cattle and made them sick. Kramer's book said that denunciations alone, even anonymous ones, were sufficient evidence for arrest. The testimony of infamous persons and criminals is admitted in cases involving witchcraft. The book stated, even a convicted murderer was a credible witness against a witch. I did not confess, not the first day, not the second, not the third. Kramer's book instructed the judges to use what he called pious fraud. They were to pretend kindness. They were to promise mercy. If you confess freely, the judge said, you will not be put to death. I believed him, so I confessed. I confessed to meeting the devil in the woods. I confessed to killing the 3 babies. I confessed to cursing the cattle and spoiling the crops and attending black masses under the new moon. I confessed to everything they wanted me to confess, because I thought it would save my life. But Kramer's book also instructed the judges what to do after a confession. The judge must take the prisoner to another place that she may confirm it was not due to the force of torture. And the death penalty is the only certain remedy. I want to tell you about the scribe, Johannes. Every day he sat in the corner and recorded everything. Every question, every answer, every scream. One evening, after the judges had left, he came to my cell. He did not speak. He simply pressed a small piece of bread through the bars, and then he left. I do not know why he did it. Perhaps he felt pity. Perhaps he was simply young enough to still believe that kindness mattered. On the morning of my execution, they dressed me in a black gown and led me to the square. The crowd was large. Execution days were entertainment. I looked for my daughter in the crowd. She was 9 years old. She was not there. I thank God she was not there. The fire was lit at noon. I want you to know, I did not scream, not because I was brave, but because I had already screamed everything I had. Kramer's book went on to become the most published text after the Bible for nearly 200 years. It was used by secular courts across Europe. It was cited in thousands of trials. It was praised by popes and condemned by theologians. But the condemnations never stopped its use. Between 40,000 and 60,000 people, most of them women, were executed for witchcraft in the centuries that followed. I was one of them, not a witch, a midwife, a mother, a woman who knew herbs and dared to help other women. That was my crime. That was all it took.